Hello Math 1 students. This lesson's on Learning Target 4B, which is finding the lengths of segments. This is going to be finding the lengths of segments using three major properties, okay, that we're going to talk about. First one is segment addition, all right? What segment addition is, it's the sum of two small segments is equal to the whole segment. So when I look at here, right, if I look at this whole segment from M to R, there are two segments that make this up. Segment MT and segment TR. And if I take those, right, if I take MT, segment MT, and I add segment TR, right, if I start at M, go to T, then I continue to R, those two segments add up to the whole segment MR. Okay, so that's the segment addition property. Next, congruent segments. We talk about congruent in geometry all the time, right? And congruent, right, the symbol here, congruent, just means they have the same measure. So when we have congruent segments, right, these are segments that have the same measure. Okay, so basically we set them equal to each other. So right here, if I told you MT was congruent to ER, I can mark those two segments congruent, and the markings on the diagram tell me that they have the same measure. So for example, if MT was 4, that means ER is 4. Okay, so the measures are equal, right, if segments are congruent. Next is midpoint. Midpoint is basically a segment that divides a whole segment into two congruent segments, right? So if I look, if I give you A is the midpoint of segment BD, if I'm given this information, right away I know that BA is congruent to AD. That's what I basically conclude. I can conclude that BA is congruent to AD. That's very important. So like, as soon as I know that, a couple of things here. If I know BD, if I knew BD was, say, 20, right, and A is the midpoint of that, to find the length of each segment, I would take BD and divide it in half. So 20 divided by 2 would be 10. So each of these segments would be 10 units long. Okay, so midpoint, directly mark the diagram, and it gives you two congruent segments. Okay, so now we're going to use these in different examples. First one, find the length of MR. Well, right away when I look, MR is the entire segment. If I look, this segment is made up of two other segments. It's made up of MT and it's made up of TR. So right away I know that I'm going to take MT, I'm going to add TR, and that will give me MR. So 9 plus 15 would give me 24. So MR is 24 units long. Okay, so remember, two small segments add up to the big segment. Now the next one's a little different, right? I'm going to take the given statements. First statement is they tell me from T all the way to V, they tell me that this segment has a length of 24 units. Now, they tell me WV has a length of 8 units. Now, I like to see that when I mark this, if I see the yellow and blue overlap right here. So basically we're looking for 8. If I look here, TW plus WV, I know has to add up to TV. Okay, So we're basically saying like TW, we don't know the length of TW, but we know WV is 8, but what is TV? TV is 24. Well, if I were to solve for TW, I would have to subtract 8. Subtract 8, I'm basically solving an equation here, and TW is 16 units long. But what we should notice is, if we know what overlaps, right? If I know I overlap from here, what would I do with this piece? I would cut it off, and what do I have remaining here? Well, 24 minus 8 would be 16 units. So there's many ways you can do it. If you know the segment addition property, write it out. Fill what you know in, and then solve for what you're looking for. Or just know, anytime you overlap, you're just subtracting the part that overlaps. Next one. A is the midpoint of BD, and they tell you BD from B to D is 14 units long. Well, as soon as I know A is the midpoint, I know right away I'm going to mark BA congruent to AD. Mark it congruent. So now to find the length of each of these, I know BA is congruent to AD. So if I take BD, divide it in half, right? 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I know each of these pieces has to be 7 units long. So BA is 7, and the measure of AD is 7. And we're done. Okay, so now, example 4. You're given A is the midpoint of PM, right? So A is the midpoint of P to M. So right away I know the two segments that make it up are congruent. Now they want us to find the length of, and I'm going to highlight them here, AM, which is this segment here. Then they want us to find the length of PM, which is the entire segment. Well, look at what you're given. You're given PA. I know right away that if A is the midpoint, PA is congruent to AM. So if PA is 8, I know right away AM is 8, so I'm going to mark the diagram there. So AM is 8 units long. Well, if I look, I know PA plus AM adds up to PM. So right away, if I know 8 plus 8 equals 16 units long. So if I look from here, I'm going to add 8, add another 8. 8 plus 8 is 16 units long. All right. Now, as we get into more tricky problems, right, you're looking for two small segments that make up a big segment, or you're looking for overlapping where you can subtract. Marking and drawing on the diagram with different colors or markers, even highlighters, right, will help tremendously. So right away here, when I look, they tell me NL is 18 units long. And right away I know this segment here, right, is 12 units long. Well, I know these overlap from here all the way to here. So basically 12 plus this segment, right, this segment, I know right away 12 plus what would give me 18? Or I can find this segment by doing 18 minus 12, and ML would be 6 units long. Again, look where they overlap. I'm subtracting the overlapping part. But now for MK, if I highlight MK, that's made up of two small segments. So what do I do with these two small segments to make the big segment? Well, I'm going to add them together to get 9 units long. Okay, marking the diagram allows you to make sure you're marking the diagram correctly, like identifying overlapping or one you have to add. Okay, now the next one, example 6. Right away here, a lot of people are going to go and do this, right? The number one mistake here, if we're looking for VU, UT, VT, the first thing we have to find is X. But here's the thing. Everybody's going to look at this and say they look congruent. the two segments look congruent, and the number one mistake will be this. But we don't know they're congruent. They don't tell us we have midpoint, and they don't tell us they're congruent. But if I look, I know if I take this segment and take this segment and add them together, that would give me the whole segment here. So, guys, when I go to add these, I combine like terms. If I know I'm adding these two expressions, all I'm going to do is combine like terms as I add them. 9x plus 11x is 20x. 1 plus 1 is 2. So 20x plus 2 will equal the whole segment, which is 22. Now I can take this equation and solve for x. Subtract 2. 20x equals 20. Divide by 20. X is equal to 1. Now, once I know x is equal to 1, now I can plug, right, that value of x back in. So, right away, 9 times 1 plus 1 will give me 9 plus 1, which is 10 units long. So, VU is 10. Now, to find UT, I can do it one of two ways, right? One, I can do 22 minus 10, right, which will give me 12, or I can plug this value of x back in. 11 times 1 plus 1 will give me 11 plus 1, which is 12. Either way, UT is 12 units long. Now VT, they already give you. You should be able to see VT is 22 units long. Couple more problems here. So this next problem, you have to read the givens, and they tell you A is the midpoint of CR. So right away, as soon as I see A is the midpoint of CR, right, I know I'm going to mark this segment congruent to this segment. So I know CA is congruent to AR. They want us to find X in the measure of CA and CR. Well, if these segments are congruent, what do I do with their measures? I take their measures and I set them equal to each other. Once I set them equal to each other, and guys, anytime you see the word midpoint, two congruent segments, set the measures equal to each other. Now, I can subtract 6x. I can add 8. I get 3x equals 18. Divide by 3. And x is equal to 6 units long. Once I know x is 6, I can go and plug it back in to find the measures of the segments. So CA would be 9 times 6 minus 8, which is 54 minus 8, which gives you 46 units. Now right away, if CA is 46, I know right away AR is going to be 46. And when they're asking me for the length of CR, from C to R, what do I now have to do with these two segments? I have to add them together. 46 plus 46 is 92 units long. So again, mark the diagrams, solve for X, plug it back in, know the different properties that it gives you and how to use them. Next one. Right away, they tell you AT is congruent to MB. So right away, if I look, AT, MB, I'm going to take my pencil or marker, whatever. I'm going to mark AT congruent to MB. So right away, I know those measures are equal. But then they also tell me, right? They tell me NM is 24 units long. So that segment there is 24. Then they tell me that TN is 2x minus 1. Right? So that segment there, TN, is 2x minus 1. And here's the thing. When I look at what I'm given, right, can I use the congruent segments right away to find x? And the answer to that is yes. If AT is congruent to MB, I know that these measures are going to be equal to each other. The 2x minus 1 is kind of a distractor here. So we're going to take the 5x plus 3, set it equal to x plus 15. Now I can solve for x. Subtract x, subtract 3, 4x equals 12. Divide by 4, x is 3. So I know x is 3. But now they want me to find the measure of Tn. Well, in order to find the measure of Tn, I needed the value of x. So now I can plug x into the expression. So Tn is equal to 2x minus 1. I'm going to replace x with 3. 2 times 3 minus 1 gives me 6 minus 1, which is 5. So Tn is 5 units long. So now, overall, they want me to find, right, the measure of TB. So from T all the way to B. Well, if I look, I'm going to find, I need the measure of MB, which is going to be 3 plus 15, which is 18. And now, how many segments do I have to add together here? I have to add Tn, Nm, and MB. So I'm going to do 5 plus 24 plus 18, which would give you, what is that, 42 plus 5 is 47 units long. So the last example here, right? This is an example that wants you to make sure you mark the diagram correctly. A lot of people are going to go add these together and set them equal to 28. But if you look at what you're given the measure of FE is 28 units long. So if I highlight FE and I say that this is 28 units long, what you have to know here is I don't add these two segments together. This segment is equal. I know FE is equal to 28. What is the measure of FE? It's 8x plus 4 equals 28. Now I can solve for x. You do not add the segments together here. 8x equals 24. X is equal to 3. Now, once I have that value of x, I can go back and plug it in to find the other segments. So df here would be 6 times 3 plus 7. 18 plus 7 would give you 25. FE, we already know is 28. So now when we're looking for segment D all the way to E, I know I'm going to add those together. So 25 plus 28 gives you 53 units long. Go ahead and try the student practice and let us know if you have questions.